Welcome to this full Microsoft Copilot demo. My name's Dougie Wood and I'm a Microsoft MVP. I also work for Valto, who are the leading experts in Copilot adoption strategies. In this video, I'm going to be using a real-world example from Valto of how our consultancy department are using Copilot. The reason why we chose this is because we touch on all the different Microsoft products which have Copilot built into them, and we're saving days a month worth of our consultants' time using Microsoft Copilot. Now, the story follows a traditional workshop approach where typically it starts off by a salesperson contacting one of our consultants via email and asking them to book in a workshop with a customer. We can then use Outlook for a series of time-saving activities using Copilot. We're then going to move into Microsoft Teams, which is typically where a lot of our meetings take place, and our workshop with our customers are often recorded and shared with them afterwards, and we can use Copilot for a whole host of features in there as well. A lot of the notes which get taken and extracted via Copilot, we then place into OneNote, which is a perfect place for storing our draft notes. And then we analyze some of the data that we've collected during those workshops using Microsoft Excel and Copilot for Excel. Then we're going to transition all of our findings into Word to create a proposal document for our customer that we will provide to them after the workshop. And as part of that, typically the Word documents are quite large and extensive. They could be somewhere between 5,000 or even 8,000 words. So we don't want to give that back to our customer as a lump of information. We want to present it back to them in a simplistic form using a PowerPoint presentation. So come with me on this journey as we look at how Copilot for Microsoft 365 is saving our consultants so much time. Starting off with Outlook. As I say, the story starts because a salesperson has reached out to me as a consultant to ask to book in a SharePoint workshop with a customer. So I'm just going to play you this little recording that we have here. Now you can see this is a very large email that I've been sent. Now, I don't know about you, but you might have emails which have got tens or even hundreds of different replies in them, and it can be quite time consuming to have to read all of that. Now with Copilot, we can actually summarize the email, and you can see it's done a fantastic job of pulling out the customer's name, what Sam asking me to do is in booking in a workshop with the customer, and it's pulled out key information such as when the customer is actually available to conduct workshops, as well as giving me a good summary of what is required for me to do as next steps. I can then use Copilot to draft a response back to the customer as well as the salesperson, and I can see here that I've pasted in a prompt, and I can choose whether or not I want to make this more direct, neutral, casual, formal, or for some reason Microsoft even allows us to draft up a response in a poem. We can choose the length, whether we want it to be short, medium, or long, and then choose to generate a response. Now, Copilot is going to be fully aware of the context of this email, and here we go. It's drafted me a response here. So it's said, "Hey Sam, thanks for forwarding this to me," and it's given me a kind of response that I can send. Now, I can choose to keep that response if I wanted to, or I could choose to make alterations to it. So if I wanted to make it longer or shorter, or make it even more formal or casual, I could choose to do that after it's made that initial draft. You can also ask it to make more types of alterations based on the tone of voice. So maybe you wanted to take the tone of voice of somebody that you know, like a celebrity, for example. So I've used the likes of Ryan Reynolds as a tone of voice in the past before to make it a little bit more jokey, a little bit more fun, to make the response sound a little bit more relaxed or comical. So now in the story, we've responded to our customer, we've booked in the workshop with them, and we can now move on to the next stage, which is actually conducting that workshop. And in this case, we're going to be doing it via Microsoft Teams. So let's transition out of Outlook and move now into Microsoft Teams and look at how Copilot can really help us inside of a Teams meeting. Now, let's pretend we're inside of the workshop Teams meeting. I often tell people to treat Copilot like it's another member of the team or it's another participant of the meeting that's not only listening and taking notes, but you could also use it as a sounding board to ask questions to. So let's say, for example, in the workshop, we've asked a load of our questions and we're sort of close to running out of time, but we want to generate some final questions to get more from the meeting, get more value from it. So this is where we could ask Copilot to say, what questions can the group ask to generate more ideas? Now, this is then going to take into consideration everything everyone's been saying so far in the meeting, and it's generated some ideas here. So it could say, how can we measure the impact of our marketing campaign on the sales and customer satisfaction, for example. So this is pull out context of the meeting that we're in, and it's given us some real great food for thought ideas to help get creative ideas flowing within the meeting. The other fantastic thing that Copilot will do inside of Teams is it will capture all the minutes, all the actions, all of the notes which are taking place. So that means our consultants don't need to necessarily be writing down loads of their own notes. You can still do this, obviously, in parallel at the same time until you're comfortable using Copilot fully, but we're now reliant a lot more on Copilot taking those notes for us, which means we can be a lot more engaged in the actual meeting that's taking place. Now, following on from a meeting, we can actually get insights from the meeting by typing in questions such as, what was the biggest concerns or what are people most excited about? Now, this gives us, as a consultant, a fantastic insight into the actual meeting that's taken place. And we could choose then, sorry, I've just jumped backwards and forwards here. It's then generated a little response here so that we can see, for example, for Joanna, the biggest concern was to ensure that the stakeholder feedback was incorporated into press releases, and they were excited about the positive feedback and the interest in the green bond aspect of the initiative. So you can see here, you can quickly get the key requirements. So as a consultant that was conducting a workshop, I would typically want to get out things like the biggest concerns that I can put into my report afterwards to make sure that I responded to those concerns, to make sure that I've got the best chance of winning the project, because we need to make sure all the concerns have been met. But also I want to remind my customer of how excited they are about this project, so I can pull out what it is they're most excited about, and again, present this back to them in the report afterwards. Next, I want to actually extract out all of the key information from the meeting that I can copy and paste it into my OneNote area, which is my sort of draft notes. So what I can do is I can use Copilot inside a team to say, what were the key topics from, and then I can select the meeting that took place. And it will then generate the key topics which took place during that particular meeting. And it's a great way of actually refreshing myself on what happened in that particular meeting. And as you can see, it's really simple just to click the copy button once it's finished generating, and I can use that afterwards to copy into OneNote. In fact, let's transition now to talk a little bit more about OneNote and show you how easy it is to get that information into a OneNote. So you can see, following on from a meeting here, it's got all the information that I need summarized automatically for me in meeting notes. I can choose to click the copy all button across the top and then paste those directly into a OneNote. Now, this means then I could do things like asking Copilot in OneNote to create me a to-do list based on the discussions that took place in that Teams meeting. So quite often in workshops, there will be actions for the consultant to take away, and we can use Copilot to ask it to create us a to-do list and export that information out into our notes so we can follow up with anything that we might need to do afterwards. As the story goes, the consultant would then typically work on those notes, fleshing out any key points or things like that they wanted to add their own spin, their own touch, their own experiences to those notes before we're going to move on to the next stage, which is a bit more of analysis. So let's jump into Excel and take a little look at how we would analyze some of the data that was captured during that workshop. So using Excel, what we would typically do in a SharePoint workshop is we would document down things like what SharePoint sites we're going to create for our customer. So typically there's quite a lot of different SharePoint sites which are owned by different departments and different content owners from each department. We also want to document down whether or not they're going to be restricted or whether they're going to be open, as in what the security model would look like and what types of teams they are, and so much other types of information. This is just a sample file, a bit of a sort of test file essentially to show you what this could potentially look like. Now, I don't know about you, but I'm not particularly fantastic at using Excel for things like formulas and creating pivot tables and things like that. Now, this is where Copilot comes in and really helps, because you can now use human language to type in something like, please visualize the amount of teams or communication sites that we have inside of this spreadsheet by department, so we can see how many different SharePoint sites are being created and what types of sites are being created per department. And again, I don't need to know anything about Excel to do this, and it's generated me a table here to show me how many of the different types of SharePoint sites are being proposed based on each of the departments. I can click a button to simply add that to a new sheet, and I've got this table then simple and easy for me to access. So I didn't need to know anything about creating specific tables or anything like that. I can just ask Copilot to do this. I could then ask follow-up questions to help analyze this, such as which content owner has the most sites. So as a consultant, I would want to make sure I knew who had the most sites assigned to them, because you don't want to overwhelm them. So there we go. We've got a snippet of information there to know that Derek is actually got the most SharePoint sites associated to him. But also Copilot, once it starts learning the data, will start prompting you with other questions that you could possibly ask it. So for example, which is the most common restricted or open types of sites? That wasn't even a question I came up with. That's a question Copilot came up with. Now it's starting to understand my data. And now it's told me that actually the most type of sites we have is restricted. So we know then the model that we're working towards for this is a lot more restricted. Whereas actually, as a consultant, if I remembered back to the workshop, if the client was saying, actually, we want to open this up quite easily and we want to have quite an open security model, then obviously this fact that Copilot has found would be contrary to that. So I could make a mental note of that, and I could go back into my recommendations in my proposal document in the next stage and say, actually, based on evidence that we found, you're actually on a much more restricted model of security than you might have thought you were. So let's move on now from the analysis stage into the kind of workshop report stage. Now, what we're going to do for that is use Word, and we're going to be using Copilot inside of Word. So what we're going to be doing is actually creating our proposal document, our workshop report, directly from the notes that we had taken and put into OneNote. So inside of Word, all I would need to do is go in and say, draft a proposal for whatever the client name is, and then use the notes from my OneNote, but also I could include other information from product sheets or any other types of information that I have inside of a Word file or Excel or PowerPoint. Then I can use Copilot to say, make this look more like a proposal document that I've previously created. So although Copilot doesn't necessarily work with templates, we can tell it to look at previous proposal documents that we've created and get it to look more like that. We can then get it to do things like add a summary, so it's aware of the full document. So why not add a quick executive summary at the top of the document? You could also get it to generate things like FAQs for you that might automatically answer some of the questions that a customer could possibly have. So this is what a typical workshop report would look like after we conducted a SharePoint workshop. And you can see it's brought in all the key information that we drafted from our OneNote, our objectives, who attended the workshop, what people are most excited about and concerns, as well as that any screenshots that I took and put into my draft notes. It's brought those in there as well, and we can use that afterwards. But we can also choose to add more information as well. So we can always use Copilot to further edit documents in line. Now, this is something I really like because it means anywhere in the document we can go and choose to draft up something new using Copilot. So as a consultant, we're always looking to convey value and almost tell our customers exactly why they should be doing something. So here I'm asking it to write me a paragraph that explains the importance of SharePoint design for a user interface. That's then going to generate me information, and it's going to give me a nice summary that I can put into my document. It's something that's missing from this already, but I think it's really going to help with this proposal and win the trust of the customer. Then all I would need to do is add, say for example, a title into here, and that paragraph is ready to go. I'm happy with that. I don't need to make any further alterations to it. So I'm leveraging Copilot at this point in time. And there we go. We've got our paragraph entered here, and that's additional information that we've added since creating this document from our draft notes. And then the final stage of writing our report would be essentially a review stage. Now, historically, we've had to rely on one or more team members to review our reports before we send them out to customers. Whereas actually, as a consultant, we want to be saving time and not necessarily having to review every single document ourselves from the very beginning. So instead, we can use Copilot to become that kind of first pair of eyes on a document. Now, as I say, consultants want to ensure we have captured all of the information and we want to present it back in the simplest form, avoiding using tech jargon and making sure all objectives have been documented. We want to make sure all the concerns have been addressed, as well as any of the things that people are excited about we've presented in here, to basically give the best chance of securing the project and winning this deal. So what we do is we often will now ask Copilot to take the role of a customer to review this document and provide us feedback. So here you can see I've asked Copilot, I want you to take the role of the customer receiving this SharePoint intranet proposal. Is there anything missing from it that would influence your decision to proceed further with the project? Then I'm going to ask it that, and it's going to start generating now a bunch of ideas and thoughts of how we could further improve this particular workshop report. Now, I've used this a few times, and it's actually saved my skin a number of times with a bunch of fantastic ideas to put into my workshop report. So it's starting to generate some ideas here now. They're just getting pushed slightly off screen, so I'm just going to scroll up. But you can see it's starting to come up with a whole bunch of different ideas. So we'll just let it finish off here, and then we'll just scroll up to show you a couple of these different ideas. Get a bit more space here. So it's talking about things like objectives. The proposal should clearly outline the objectives. So maybe it thinks that there's some other ways that we could clarify some of the objectives. Design and user experience. We put a paragraph in there, but maybe we could elaborate on that a little bit more. Now, we've not mentioned security at all in this document so far. So actually, that's a fantastic thing to actually input into this. Maybe as well, it said things like training and support, so including things about our support contracts and how these work. But I've seen this in the past before recommend all sorts of fantastic things, like making sure we include things like case studies and information on past projects that we worked on similar. In fact, it's identified in this particular document that there is no information about integration with existing systems. Now, that's very key when it comes to a SharePoint intranet, is to think about how it's interacting with other systems. And also, it's told me maybe provide a timeline so the customer can know what to expect going forward. So once, basically going back to the story now, we've had our workshop, we've drafted our notes, we've analysed the information captured during the workshop, and now we've generated our workshop report. Typically then the next stage, even after using Copilot, we'd get another consultant to quickly look over it. But say rather than in the past, maybe a consultant, a colleague would have found 5 things wrong or 5 things that should be improved about this document. Now typically they're only finding 1 or 2, and it's saving time because they're not having to do so much reviewing themselves. So not only we're saving ourselves time, but we're also saving our colleagues time, which is compounding that time-saving effect. So now we've created our workshop report, we now want to create a PowerPoint document that we're going to use to essentially present this back to our customer. As I mentioned before, quite often these workshop reports are quite lengthy and we wouldn't want to spend hours and hours and hours running through it with a customer. We want a nice simplistic PowerPoint presentation that summarizes the key points that we can share back to them and let them consume the workshop report fully in their own time. So what we can do using PowerPoint is actually create the PowerPoint completely from scratch using Copilot. So by going into PowerPoint, a blank PowerPoint, and selecting Copilot, you'll see there's a few options which come up at the top. We've got the option of creating a PowerPoint from a topic. So we could say create a presentation about SharePoint, for example, or we can say create a presentation from a file. And this we can then look up recent documents that we've been working on. Say, for example, this Contoso SharePoint workshop report, and then it's going to create a presentation directly from this report. And of course, we could give the prompt a little bit more detail. We could tell it the types of slides we wanted, the type of information we want to include or exclude. But I'm just going to show you how fantastic of a job it does just purely by saying, create me a presentation based around this workshop report. It's already got the message. It knows what it wants me to be provided with, essentially. It knows that it's going to be a commercial type of presentation that I'm going to show back to a customer. So you can see here, it's generating the slides and it'll give you a kind of percentage as it's creating it. You can also see across the bottom like a little progress bar, so you can see how far it's up to. Now, because this is quite a large presentation, as I say, I've not scoped it down. It's going to be quite large. It might take a minute, 2 minutes, something like that to create, but there we go. We can see it's now popped into life. It's created those slides. Because I've generated this from a blank document, it's not really provided any styling, and we'll come on to looking at that in a moment. But you can see it's done a fantastic job. It's added key things like an agenda, an introduction, the workshop overview, all key things that we'd want to talk to our customer about. There might be some things in here that we don't want to include because it will, as I say, it will bring through as much information as it can find, including tables and images. It'll also come up with images itself. Now, we can theme this simply by going in and adding a theme on top of the PowerPoints. If you've got a corporate design or brand package in PowerPoint, you can apply over it. Or actually, if you have a sort of master template of a PowerPoint, you can almost start the Copilot process off from a template, and it will automatically use a lot of the templated slides that you have inside of your master file. You can also use Copilot to help style your PowerPoint. So say, for example, if it was using a font that you didn't really like, you could go in and ask it to say, please change all of the fonts within this particular PowerPoint, and it will go away, and you can see here now the fonts of the titles have automatically all changed on each slide. I really love Copilot inside of PowerPoint, as it's, for me and the rest of the consultants, it saved us so much time. If anything in this whole process, it's probably the creation of PowerPoints that saved us the most time. And you yourself might have spent days in the past before creating PowerPoints. And honestly, this now takes something that might have taken a day or two into not even being an hour or two. So let's wrap up our story. So as a quick reminder of what happened, we had our email come in from a customer to request a workshop. We then went to Teams where we had our workshop, and we extracted our notes, and Copilot supported us by generating more information. We generated that information, we put it into OneNote as a draft. We analyzed the data that we captured during the workshop using Copilot instead of Excel. As I say, you don't have to be an Excel specialist anymore. You can use Copilot to help analyze data. We then used all of that information to generate a workshop report inside of Word, and we told it to make it look like a previous proposal that we created, to style it up. And then because our document was so large, we wanted to create a presentation pitch deck for our customer, and we did that in PowerPoint, generating it directly from the content that we have in our workshop report. So that is essentially the demo of Copilot for Microsoft 365. But I also want to talk to you a little bit about Copilot Studio, because there are plenty of opportunities in the workplace where actually you need to have more of a bespoke Copilot solution. So everything we've looked at so far is essentially Copilot for Microsoft 365, which is the off-the-shelf product. Whereas actually you can build your own bespoke copilots to tap into knowledge bases or databases that you have. You can pull data from external sources, and you can create what they call agents for very specific tasks. So those copilots were very specific to the Microsoft product. So it's specific to Excel, specific to Word, specific to PowerPoint, but you could create your own that is specific to you. So in recent times, we've been looking at specific examples of how Copilot could be used, and we've been working with companies such as legal and finance and things like that. Legal industries looking at building out Copilots which help them reviewing contracts and writing up new amendments to contracts and things like that. Or in a kind of more finance world, it might be, say, validating information or valuing certain properties, assets, and things like that. And you can have Copilot pulling in that bespoke data and then pushing out a custom export in Copilot. You can also get Copilot to trigger action. So maybe interact with something like Dynamics 365 or a customer support desk system. You can get it to interact with specific things for triggering things like ordering equipment, for example. So custom actions that you need it to trigger. Now, bespoke copilots are fantastic because it's a great way of scaling your team by creating these virtual agents that can process things. So things like first line support and things that people might need to ask questions to, tap into knowledge bases that you've currently got. So if you've got a set of policy documents, why not have a Copilot overlaid over the top of that is aware of those documents, and people can ask questions and they can ask them to say, how many holidays do I get a year? And that Copilot can look at those policy documents and answer those questions. Also coming very soon in 2024 is the ability for these agents to have memory, so they can remember interactions that they've had with employees, and also have an agent-to-agent collaboration. So, for example, if you've got, say, for example, it might be an estate agent company which is doing valuations. You might have a valuation bot, and then you might have a say sales proposal bot which is generating proposals and information. Those two agents can actually collaborate and work together and pass information between themselves. So that's a feature which is coming soon, which sounds a little bit like the beginning of iRobot, if I'm totally honest, but I'm really excited to see what that's going to bring further down the line. Now, I wouldn't be doing my job if I wasn't telling you how Valto could help ensure success with adopting Copilot inside of your organization. Now, the first free call to action is we are offering a free 3-hour training session with every license purchased from Valto. So every Copilot license that's purchased from Valto, we're offering a free 3-hour hands-on training. And now you need a license for that because you're going to follow along that training. Now, this offer ends at the end of December 2024, so get in contact before then to book your place. Now, going forward with Copilot, you will want to look at having a adoption strategy to ensure a successful rollout. Now, the first stage of this is to conduct what we call a Copilot workshop. Now, Valto can host this, and Valto will come in for a full day, or we could do it remotely over multiple sessions, as we've looked at in Microsoft Teams. And the purpose of this is to give a bit of an introduction to Copilot. Now, so far we've been talking about Copilot for Microsoft 365, but there's a whole host of other Copilot products, as we've previously been talking about, and we would make sure you're full up to speed what all those different Copilots are, what they do, and most importantly, how your organization can specifically use them, because every organization is actually different. There might be some trends between different industries, but everyone is using them slightly different. Then we'll talk to you about the preparation phase, what you're going to need to do to prepare for Copilot. So is it whether data cleansing, a migration and retention, security assessments, and on top of that, we talked about the licenses, how to get the best value, how to get the best deal, how to co-term your licenses, so you're only committing to them for the period of time that you need to, and then also a full adoption process, so talking to you about how Valto's adoption specialists can help you with things like training programs, super user programs, and making sure actually not only is the Copilot product adopted, but you get that full return on investment. Now, a workshop is only £1,500, and that's the price at the time of this recording. So if you're watching this in a couple of years' time, please don't hold us to that. But at this point in time, it's only £1,500. So get in contact and we can discuss how we can help you ensure a successful rollout of Copilot. So I just want to thank you so much for watching this video. If you've got any questions at all, use the comments feed below. You can contact us, so go to www.valto.co.uk/YouTube. There's also going to be a link in the description, and there's also a link inside the bio section of our YouTube channel. Go and check out the rest of the videos. We have loads of great, fantastic videos about Copilot on our YouTube channel, and we're producing more and more content every single week. So if you're not already, subscribe to our channel and keep your eyes peeled for future content. Thank you.